Hello everyone, welcome back to the layout, the Union Pacific Railroad Evanston subdivision in HO Scale. My name is Daryl Cruz. I'm the owner and builder of this layout and your host for a special summary from start to finish, sort of this area here that I've been working on since basically summer of 21. And it's kind of wanted to show you the transformation that has taken place in this area. This is just one, room or area of the layout. And I've kind of gotten it to a point where it's finished, although I should add it's sort of finished because it's finished to the point of having some basic scenery and ballast, but still have to do a lot of detail. But let's start at the very beginning. This is back in June of 21. We didn't even own the house yet. It was still under construction, and this is what the whole basement looked like, but specifically the room that we're going to be centering on, the room that I've just kind of finally got to a finished sort of state. And so this is kind of what we started with. I snuck down and took a look at the basement. I was definitely very anxious to see what I had. I can remember I was trying to think, man, I got a lot of work to do. But skipping now though to April of 22, so this is like a year, almost a full year later, I finally got to this part of the basement. This was the last part of the basement that I finished out. And you can kind of see how I did the finishing work. I framed the walls, put in all the electrical, and put up the sheetrock and taped and floated it and so forth. But if you notice, I just did the top half because that's all I really needed to do because the layout covers the bottom half. The main reason why I didn't do the full thing is, one, is the cost. It was a little bit cheaper to do it this way, but the main thing was carrying full sheets of sheetrock down the basement stairs. I'm in my 60s, and so definitely was not going to be able to do that, and I didn't want to have my wife help me and stuff, so I basically took the sheets, cut them in half, and carried them down half sheet at a time. And so doing this definitely make it a lot easier. So when I get this house back to where we need to sell it, you know, the layout's removed and so forth, won't take too much for our children or my wife to have somebody finish out the bottom half of that, and you know, so that it can be sold. All right, now we're in May of that same year, and you can see I've got the sheetrock all painted and everything, and I'm starting now on the benchwork extending into this area. Now you can see also a lot of the work that I've done. Remember, it's a year between when we started and when we first got to this room. So there's a lot of layout that was built in the rest of the basement before I got to this point here. But this is in May of 22. I had the sheetrock ready to go. Notice I painted the floor. And I do have some carpet down now, which you'll see as we go through. But this is the peninsula now coming back into the room. Before I got too far, I wanted to, before I finished out the rest of the bottom level there at Evanston, I needed to get the helix done. So this was in the end of May 22 is when I basically took the whole month of May to build this helix and connect it with the staging yard and then extend it on into the second level. And now we're in June. This is still May. Again, see a little bit of the overview of where we are. The entire basement is 2,200 square feet. This area here is probably maybe less than a third of that. And you can see the type of construction that I've been using throughout the layout, the L girder construction. And then this, of course, is where the Evanston Yard is now. You see the extension up into the second level, the helix tying into the staging yard. So that was a major accomplishment getting that helix done. Probably one of the more complicated parts. All right, then from there I started to work on the benchwork for Evanston Yard. You notice I made a little transition here from using L-girder construction. So the areas that I'm doing a lot of scenery to, now the yard area, which is basically just a bunch of track, decided to switch over to just a simple box construction. And then I put, so that I could put plywood on top of it and put down all the track for the main line as well as the yard. Now with the helix done and the this part here done, I started to get into the idea that I was going to have a way of getting from here over to where the furnace is and so forth. And you can see there's a little chair there that I've been using. It works out really well. All right, but this is what the framing, there's a chair. Basically I sit on the chair and roll back and forth in order to get to the dispatcher's office, which is inside the helix, and then also the water heater, furnace, water softener, and so on. Those two speakers, I ended up moving those under the layout. Here's the same area now with the plywood on top of the framing for the Evanston Yard. I've been using 3/8 inch plywood throughout the entire layout. I would say if I had to do anything different, I may use a little bit thicker plywood for the helix. But it's been working out real well. I did have to spend some time making a little adjustments here and there on the helix because of the 3/8 inch plywood not being quite as stable or as straight and level as something that was a little bit thicker, a little bit higher quality. But it has, after I made a bunch of adjustments, it has worked out quite nicely. All right, then in mid-June, I got all the, at least the mainline track put in through this area. So see a train going through. This is the UTLX area here. As I built the main line further and further, I always, of course, had to run the trains on it and extend the distance from the staging yard to the end of the main line from the staging yard. So this was in June of 22. So I have been working on the layout for not quite a year by this point. So construction went pretty quickly as I went through that first year because didn't really have any time to do, or didn't really have any need to do anything except build the layout. Didn't spend a lot of time running trains back and forth, although I did do quite a bit of that. But basically it was trying to steam forward all the time to try and get the main line extended to the point where we'd have a complete loop all the way around. So this is just the main line that I put down first. Looks a lot different than it does today. There above the locomotives there you can see the first extension of the upper level. One thing I always like about getting a section done was being able to put the fascia on. That kind of gave it a little bit more of a finished look. And here we come up to the East Evanston control point. As I extended the main line, I did, make sure I put in the turnouts where needed and all the control points, and I also hooked up the signaling. So we moved into the house in July, the end of July 21. And then this is how far I was on the layout as of June of 22, so not even a year later. I always use screws to kind of make sure I didn't go off the edge of the layout. All right, then the next step was to connect the Evanston Yard to the second level, making the transition from the first level up to the second level. Now, I mentioned the helix was one of the more complicated aspects of building the layout. This was probably the most complicated because it included a flyover of the staging yard and then a curved section. And this basically was, one piece that had to be extended and supported all the way around. Now you notice this is when I realized my mistake on that piece of benchwork there. Here I kind of made a little bit of a allowance for it with the fascia, but there still was a little bit of a mistake there that I did finally remedy. So the first thing I did was cut a piece of plywood and splice actually two pieces together. The first one I did was not sharp enough, and I had to start over with a little bit sharper one here so that it fit exactly into the little space between the furnace and the stairwell. Then I put some 1x4s across at 12-inch centers. And then to give the this piece of benchwork some structural integrity, I used the fascia screwed to the 1x4s and also the plywood. That gave it its vertical structural integrity so that it basically is supported at the stairwell there, and then there's a couple of supports from the staging yard up to the flyover, and then of course it's attached to the benchwork from the Evanston Yard. So it took a lot of measuring and a lot of trial and error basically to get this. But by the way, it's not just the fascia that provides the structural integrity, but also the backdrop. The backdrop is also screwed to the 1x4s and the plywood. All right, then once I got that done, then I started to work on the upper level. This was now in July, the first part of July. I did all the bench work and track for the second level from the helix to West Vaco, which is a control point here at the base of the peninsula. Here you can see a full view. And of course I ran trains up the helix and to this point. So this is in the first part of July of 22. So we still had not been in the house a year yet by this point. Although I think this now is the end of July. But I'll take that back. This is September. This is moving way forward because I spent a lot of time completing the main line from the upper level, West Vaco there, all the way around the basement to the other end where the flyover goes over to the second level. So I spent a lot of time connecting those, so that I had a complete loop. I had the golden spike in October of 22. So now we're fast forwarding, did a lot of scenery work on the peninsula and so forth, and we're fast forwarding now to September of 23. So this is definitely much more recently. You notice I have the scenery done there by the UTLX, and then now I have all the track work in. So between the end of July, when I had the upper level track and framing done, the end of July 22, now we're moving up to September of 23. So this is more than a year later. And a lot has been put together here. All the track's been laid in for the Evanston Yard. I have a lot of the backdrops in at this point. In fact, I think I have all of the backdrops in. I have changed a few since this time. But you can see the trains running through the area with the track all in place. Have a couple of buildings in. That's the actual Evanston roundhouse in the backdrop. Did not have enough room on the layout for it. That roundhouse is now like a convention center. They've been restoring it. The inside does not look like the original insides of the roundhouse, but they have some convention space in there. All right, so this was September, so just a couple of months ago. This is when I decided, okay, I'm going to power through and see if I can get this done more to a completed, more completed state. Used this window here for a long time as I ran trains. So by this point also, I had already been operating quite a bit by myself, but also in groups. I think my first operating session was in January of 23. So I had already been doing about 9 months of operating sessions. Probably had about 5 or 6 op sessions in this time. And you can see I have both ends of the Evanston Yard throats completed. All right, now we're moving up to October of 23. And the first thing I did was worked on putting in the scenery and ballast on the upper level. So as I go around the layout, I will definitely do the upper level first. And then that way I won't have to worry about messing up the bottom level with the scenery and ballasting and so forth. So this is what the upper level looks like with all the ballast in and the scenery put in, the backdrops and everything, put in some telephone lines. Went through a bunch of different colors for the fascia before I decided to go with black, which I'm really happy with the way that turned out. And then in in October of 23, then I started to work on the scenery and ballast on the lower level. I had already done the area around UTLX repair facility, and then I worked on the west side first. You see the west throat done, the area around the engine house and engine facilities, and then the scenery, the plaster and ground foam and everything on the little area between the Evanston Yard and the UTLX area. So this is put in October. Extended the backdrop all the way to the scenery by the UTLX. I've been really excited about the way that the ballast really makes a difference. Covering up all the plywood and making the track look a lot more realistic. And then this is what it looks like today. I did move that table out of there. I had that in there while I was working on it. So it's in the other room now. But this is now fully ballasted. And what the room looks like, I did end up painting the fascia for the bottom also black. Definitely the best color, I think, for a fascia. Something dark. I had used a Sonoran desert color, kind of a sandish color for a long time. But making the transition to black has definitely helped a lot. I wish I had painted, when I painted the ceiling, I wish I had painted the ceiling white above the helix. I figured that was going to be an unfinished part of the basement, but I didn't realize it would be so visible from this room. It's kind of hard to spray it now. Although I might figure out a way, if I just get a bunch of drop cloths, I should be able to do it. But anyway, this is what it looks like today. It's been a lot of fun. I've been kind of operating on here as much as I can, trying to work out any turnout areas that are still not quite up to speed. Little bits of ballast here and there. And then also there's different areas where the glue is holding the rails in a spot when it should be moving, or there's been some kind of out of gauge track on the turnout, so out of gauge rail on the turnout. So I've been making some adjustments there, filing points and frogs, making sure that all the turnouts work flawlessly. So basically in a couple years, well, about 2.5 years maybe, went from that to this. Definitely a big transition. I've been very happy with everything. It's been a ton of fun. I have really enjoyed doing this and working on this. And this is just one section of the basement. Still have a little bit of ballasting to do here on this flyover yet. I'll get to that here in a couple weeks. Not going to make it by Christmas time. We have company and so forth, so not going to be able to get to that before Christmas, but probably before the end of the year. And then, of course, I have all the rest of the basement to work on yet as well to get everything kind of to this level. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. It's kind of cool to see how things have gone from the very start to now, kind of the finish line. Make sure you like and subscribe and comment if you could. I'd really appreciate it. Have a great Christmas, everyone. Merry, Merry Christmas. Hope you have a great time with your family and friends. Take care.